In 1972, we launched a machine called Pioneer 10. It was the first human spacecraft designed to travel through the asteroid belt, fly past Jupiter, and eventually leave the solar system entirely. And because we knew it was going to drift into the interstellar dark, perhaps surviving longer than the Earth itself, we decided to attach a message to it. A pair of scientists, including Carl Sagan, designed a small plaque made of gold anodized aluminum and bolted it to the antenna support struts. They wanted to introduce us to the neighborhood. So they engraved a map of our solar system. They engraved the hyperfine transition of neutral hydrogen, and right there in the center, they engraved a line drawing of a naked man and a naked woman. The man has his right hand raised in a gesture of goodwill. We sent our own reflection out into the terrifying void, hoping that whoever or whatever finds it will look at those lines and understand them. We made a massive, profound assumption. We assume that the universe has eyes. We assume that an alien intelligence will understand two-dimensional visual representation. We assumed that the rest of the cosmos is operating on our specific biological frequency. You ever think about how arrogant that is? How we look up at the infinite, sprawling chaos of the night sky, and we just expect to find a mirror. In a world full of noise, trust the signal. If you're hearing this, you've already found it. This is Dove and Serpent Radio. Stay with me. I don't know where you're listening from tonight. Maybe you're sitting on the hood of your car in an empty parking lot, feeling the heat radiate off the engine block into the cool night air. Maybe you're standing by a window in a dark kitchen, watching the wind move through the trees. A glass of water sweating in your hand. Or maybe you're just lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling that familiar, quiet ache of the early morning hours. That strange, heavy feeling of being entirely awake while the rest of your time zone is asleep. It's easy to feel lonely at this hour. It's easy to look around the quiet rooms of your life and feel a profound sense of isolation. But I want you to picture something for a second. Picture how Hollywood has taught us to imagine alien life. For 100 years, our science fiction has basically shown us the exact same thing. A bipedal creature, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head on top of a torso. Maybe the skin is gray or green, maybe the eyes are large and black. And there's some ridges on the forehead, but fundamentally, it is just a human being in a rubber suit. It's a projection of our own anatomy onto the unknown. We are obsessed with the idea that intelligence requires a face. We want something we can look in the eye. We want something we can talk to. But there's a reason I'm telling you this. The universe is not obligated to make sense to us. The universe is not obligated to use our blueprint. Life does not conform to our comfort zone. Life conforms to the container that it's placed in. If you want to know what alien life might actually look like, you don't need a telescope. You just need to look down. Consider a creature right here on Earth called the siphonophore, specifically the Praia dubia. If you took a submarine down into the midnight zone of the ocean, thousands of feet below the sunlight. You might bump into one. It does not look like an animal. It looks like a glowing, gelatinous piece of string drifting in the black water. But it's not one animal. It's a colonial organism. It's made up of thousands of individual, genetically identical clones called zooids, all linking themselves together to form a single massive entity. Some of the clones are solely dedicated to swimming. Some are purely stomachs, dedicated to digesting food. Some are just stinging tentacles, tasked with defense. They have no central brain. They have no single identity. They're a massive, decentralized intelligence, operating as a single fluid wave in the crushing pressure of the abyss. They can grow to be over 100 feet long. If we found that floating in the atmosphere of another planet, we would call it a monster. We would have absolutely no idea how to communicate with a mind that is scattered across 100 feet of specialized, cloned jelly. But it's here, sharing our planet, operating on a completely different set of biological rules. I was thinking about this recently, about the sheer, terrifying creativity of the universe. Lately, the world feels rigid. The daytime world demands that you fit into a very specific box. You have to have a job, a schedule, a digital profile, a neatly defined identity. You have to speak the language of the algorithm. And when you don't fit perfectly into that architecture, when your attention drifts, when your emotions don't align with the spreadsheet of modern expectations, you feel alienated. But what if feeling alienated is just a recognition of how vast the possibilities actually are? I want to show you something strange. Keep this image in mind. Think about Europa. It's a moon orbiting Jupiter. From the outside, it looks like a dead, scratched billiard ball. It is entirely encased in a shell of solid ice that is miles thick. The surface temperature is hundreds of degrees below zero. It is bathed in the lethal radiation of Jupiter's magnetic field. But underneath that ice, scientists believe there is a global liquid saltwater ocean. An ocean that is deeper and contains more water than all of the oceans on Earth combined. Imagine what life looks like down there. There's no sunlight, none. Photosynthesis is impossible. The water is pitch black. From the ceiling of the ice all the way down to the rocky seafloor. If there are creatures moving through that massive, dark ocean, they don't have eyes. Eyes are an evolutionary response to the glowing sun. And these creatures have never seen a star. Instead of light, maybe they navigate by sound, or sensing the subtle electromagnetic shifts in the water caused by Jupiter's massive gravity. Imagine a creature the size of a freight train, a slow-moving leviathan made of heavy muscle and acoustic receptors. It feeds on the chemical heat of the hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the sea. It communicates with its own kind by producing ultra-low frequency hums that vibrate through the water for thousands of miles. Think about the psychology of a creature like that. It has no concept of the sky. It has no concept of up in the way we do, because up is just a ceiling of impenetrable, eternal ice. If you somehow managed to drill through the ice, sink a microphone down there, and translate a message to it, how would you explain the concept of a galaxy? How would you explain fire? How would you explain the golden plaque on the Pioneer probe? You couldn't. Their entire reality, their entire philosophy would be bounded by the cold dark and the warm vents. And yet they would be perfectly adapted, perfectly alive, and completely oblivious to the fact that we are spinning around a star just a few planets away. Makes you wonder how much of our own reality is just a ceiling of ice we haven't figured out how to look past yet. Let's leave the water. Let's go somewhere even stranger. What about a planet that doesn't even have a surface? Look at the gas giants. Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, massive, swirling spheres of hydrogen and helium, where the storms are larger than the entire planet Earth, and they rage for hundreds of years. There is no ground to stand on. If you fell into Jupiter, you would just keep falling, crushed by atmospheric pressure and heat, until you just simply dissolved into the metallic core. Decades ago, people like Carl Sagan speculated about what life might look like in a place with no ground. He imagined creatures he called floaters. Picture a living hot air balloon, but the size of a small city. A massive, incredibly delicate organism floating in the upper atmosphere, where the pressure and the temperature are just right. It stays buoyant by pumping warm hydrogen gas into its massive parachute-like bell. It doesn't have bones, doesn't have skin as we know it, but a thin, iridescent membrane that shifts and ripples in the eternal wind. It spends its entire life falling and rising in the sky. If it sinks too low, it gets crushed by the pressure. If it floats too high, it gets destroyed by radiation. So it just rides the thermals, endlessly drifting through clouds of ammonia and water vapor. How does a city-sized balloon communicate? Maybe it flashes like massive bioluminescent patterns across its skin like a cuttlefish. Maybe it generates its own radio waves, singing electromagnetic songs across the chaotic static of the planetary storms. It never lands. It never builds a tool. It never discovers fire. It just exists, a vast, floating consciousness suspended in a perpetual storm. We look for aliens that build radios and launch rockets, because that's what we do. We think intelligence is synonymous with industry. We think consciousness requires hands to manipulate the environment. But what if the highest form of intelligence in the galaxy is just a 2-mile wide balloon, happily eating lightning in the clouds of a gas giant, perfectly content to never build a single machine? Maybe you're having the same kind of night I am. The kind of night where you step outside and the air is perfectly still. And you look up at the stars and you realize how exhausting it is to constantly be building things, to be constantly striving, producing, and manipulating your environment to prove that you exist. Sometimes the most profound thing you can do is just float in the atmosphere and let the storm carry you. But the strangeness of the universe isn't just about shape or environment. It's about time. We are incredibly fast creatures. We're carbon-based, fueled by oxygen, and we run hot. Our hearts beat 80 times a minute. We live for maybe 80 years, if we're lucky. We perceive reality in rapid, continuous frames. But what if the alien we're looking for is not made of carbon? What if it's made of silicon? Imagine a rogue planet, a planet that was ejected from its solar system billions of years ago, and is now just drifting through the interstellar void, completely unattached to any star. The surface is brutally cold, almost at absolute zero. Carbon-based chemistry stops completely at that temperature. Water is as hard as granite. But silicon chemistry might still work. It would just work incredibly, impossibly slowly. Picture a being that doesn't look like an animal at all. It looks like a sprawling network of quartz and crystalline structures covering a continent. A living silicate web. Does not have a brain in a skull. Its consciousness is distributed across thousands of miles of these piezoelectric crystals, communicating through slow electrical charges. Because the temperature is so low, the chemical reactions required for it to think would require a massive amount of time. To this creature, a single thought might take 100 human years to form. A conversation with another crystalline network might take 1,000 years. It's alive, it's conscious, and it's perhaps incredibly wise. But its frame rate is so unbelievably slow that if we landed a ship on that planet, we wouldn't even recognize it as life. We would walk out in our spacesuits, look at the beautiful sprawling crystals. We would just think it was geology. We would just think it's a rock. We might even pull out our drills and start mining it for resources, completely unaware that we are cutting into the cerebral cortex of a being that's in the middle of a thought that started during the Roman Empire. And if that creature could somehow perceive us, we would just be a blur. A frantic, vibrating flash of heat that landed, scurried around for a fraction of a microsecond, and then vanished. We'd be a brief, meaningless spark of static in their long, dark, quiet lives. We assume that if we meet an alien, we'll be able to shake its hand. We assume we'll be able to sit down and have a conversation. What if we're separated by a temporal wall so thick we can't even perceive each other's existence, even if we're standing on the exact same rock? I think about that when the world feels like it's moving too fast. We're constantly pressured to react, respond, and form an opinion, keep up with the relentless scrolling feed of the daytime world. We're told that speed is a virtue. But maybe your internal clock just runs a little closer to the crystal than the carbon. Maybe you aren't falling behind. Maybe you're just taking the necessary time to form a complete thought in a world that is obsessed with the blur. You don't always have to operate on the standard frequency. Let's push this even further. Let's step away from physical matter entirely. What if life doesn't need to be solid or liquid or gas? What if life can organize in the fourth state of matter, plasma? Stars are just massive churning balls of plasma and magnetic fields. Inside the corona of a star, the magnetic field lines constantly twist, snap, and reconnect, releasing these massive amounts of energy. Physicists have run computer simulations showing that under the right conditions, dust and plasma can spontaneously form into microscopic double helix structures, just like DNA, but made of pure energy and magnetic force. Imagine an entity that lives inside a sun, a creature made entirely of electromagnetic fields and charged particles. It feeds on the nuclear fusion of the star. It's completely invisible to the human eye, riding the massive solar flares like waves, communicating through bursts of X-ray radiation. An entity of pure light and magnetism. To a creature like that, a physical planet like Earth would just look like a cold, dead piece of debris. They wouldn't understand why anyone would want to be trapped in heavy, wet carbon bodies, anchored to a rock by gravity. They are beings of pure, roaring energy dancing in the nuclear fire. We send our little metal probes out into the dark, carrying our golden plaques, hoping to find someone who looks like us. And the entire time, the universe might be absolutely teeming with life. There might be acoustic leviathans singing in the dark oceans of ice moons. There might be city-sized balloons drifting through the storms of Jupiter. There might be crystalline minds thinking their slow, heavy thoughts in the interstellar void. There might be plasma ghosts living in the very stars we use to navigate. There might even be a shadow biosphere right here on Earth. Organisms that operate on a completely different biochemical architecture, passing right through our living rooms, completely invisible to our microscopes, because we don't even know what chemical signature to look for. The universe is not an empty room waiting for us to find a mirror. It's a crowded, chaotic, wildly imaginative ecosystem. And I think that is incredibly beautiful. When you feel that deep midnight loneliness, that sense that you're an alien in your own life, I want you to remember the siphonophore. I want you to remember the floaters and the gas giants and the slow-thinking crystals in the dark. You are a very specific kind of strange. You are a bipedal ape, filled with water and iron, breathing a highly reactive gas, walking around on a spinning rock, capable of turning vibrations in the air into music and poetry. You are a bizarre, beautiful anomaly. You don't need the universe to look exactly like you in order to belong to it. You don't need the people around you to operate on your exact frequency for your signal to have value. We're all just trying to communicate through the ice. We're all just flashing our bioluminescence into the dark, hoping something else sees the light. Look out your window tonight, or just look at the shadows stretching across your ceiling. Think about the sheer scale of what might be out there, living, breathing, and experiencing reality in ways that would completely break the human mind to understand. You don't have to figure it all out before you go to sleep. You don't have to decode the entire cosmos. You just have to be here. You're part of the strangeness. You're participating in the mystery. Take a deep breath of the night air. Let the rigid, heavy rules of the daytime world dissolve for just a little while. Let yourself be a little alien. The sun will come up, the noise will return, the world will demand that you fit back into the shape of a human being. But for now, in this pocket of the night, the dark belongs to us. Keep your eyes open for the shadows. Trust the unseen architecture, and whatever you do, keep that signal close. You've been listening to Dove and Serpent Radio. And until next time, stay strange in the silence and keep the dial somewhere between wonder and understanding.